Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our dear sister. The message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? So I was listening to that confession about that young South African woman who was saying that when she went to Zim, she was made to stand on top of a grave and she got married to the spirit of the man that was killed by his own father. So I am also in that same situation. But sometimes we have to make those painful sacrifices so that this avenging spirit, it won't finish off the rest of the family. So when I got married to my husband, I was really happy because I come from a very poor family and I was now getting married into a family that had a lot of money. So I was like really happy, but I did not know that my in-laws' intentions were that if I was going to give birth, and if I was going to give birth to a girl, then she was going to be used for the same ritual. So my daughter, she has since passed away. And at that time, when I got married to my husband, that was when I came from the village and I started staying in Harare. And this was this was like the first time ever being in Harare. And we were then given our own house by my father-in-law. With time, my mother-in-law, she used to call me to the family house and she used to tell me a lot of story, like the history, and she used to tell me a lot of stories, telling me the history of the family that I had gotten married into. I was then told that my husband's grandfather, what he had done is that this was somewhere in the 1970s, early 1970s. That is when he had murdered two people. So these people that he had murdered, they were both from Malawi. Like, you know, during those days, there were a lot of people that were traveling, migrating from Zambia, Malawi, and they would pass through Zimbabwe going to South Africa. So most of them, they will end up working in the farms, because during those days, the farms, the commercial farms, they were still operating in Zim. So most of the people from Malawi, instead of going to South Africa, they will just end up in Zim. So it was said that my husband's grandfather, he owned a piece of land, and then he met two men. These men, they were both brothers. They were from Malawi, and he offered them a job so that they can look after his cattle, because he had a lot of cattle, a lot of livestock. So they both agreed. So while these men were now working for him, that was when he bought a mill. And when he bought that mill, he wanted to expand his businesses because he had butcheries, grocery stores, and in Harare he had a tea, and in Harare he also had a supermarket. Even right now, the family that I got married into, they run a lot of these supermarkets. So at that time, he wanted to strengthen his businesses, and he then thought of sacrificing these two men from Malawi that were working for him. So he did this with this other traditional healer who was said to be from an area in Chiweshe. That is where he went. When he went to Chiweshe, he was then given some guys that were going to murder these two people. In our country, we call them Mabinya. Those thugs that will kill you, and after they would have killed you, and after they would have killed you, they will harvest your body parts, Mabinya. So he brought those four men with him, and they were staying with him in Harare at that time. So on the night when he wanted to murder those two men from Malawi, he then drove with those men back to his plot. He had already given the men that were working for him their salary. So they used to go to the Shabin, where they used to gamble. And when they were returning back from the Shabin, he was waiting for those men, and then they attacked those two men. And after they had attacked them, then they got them into the car, and then they brought them to Harare. And when they brought them to Harare, that was when they started to slaughter them. And my mother-in-law said that these two men, the way that they were slaughtered, It was as if they were slaughtering a cow. They opened up their bodies as they were harvesting the body parts. So what they wanted was their intestines, which was going to be sold to another traditional healer. Then my husband's grandfather, what he wanted was the heart, and he also wanted the fingers. So these fingers, the way that they were going to be used, they were the ones that will be calling people to his businesses, to his supermarkets. Even right now, we are told that these charms, they are still working. Those are the charms that are sustaining his businesses, because the family that I got married into, they are still running this business that was left behind by my husband's grandfather. So after they had slaughtered them, they took all the body parts that they wanted. The rest of the body parts, they took them back to that traditional healer, which is in Chiweshe, and he then gave them to other people that also wanted to use human body parts for their businesses. My husband's grandfather then started making like a lot of money. He was already rich at that time, but he was now like ultra rich. And by the time that my husband was born, that was when there was a problem of the girls that were born into the family. They were starting to run mad. So what they did is that before he had passed away, they then spoke with him, and he confessed, and he said that this was what he had done. So after my husband's grandfather had confessed, he then said that these two men that he had murdered, they kept on coming back to him. Their spirits kept on coming back to him, and they said that we worked for you for a very long time. It is time for you to pay up. You need to pay us. He then asked them, this was after the whole family had visited this other traditional healer, but this they did in secret, because we are like Christians, and people at our church don't even know that in the night we go and we consult with different traditional healers. So when they went to that traditional healer, they then confessed again, and he said that this was what he had done. So he wanted the traditional healer to assist him so that the spirit of those two men from Malawi can possess one of my husband's aunties, so that the spirit of those men, they can say whatever that they wanted. So then the traditional healer did his thing, and then my husband's aunties, they got possessed. Two of them, they were possessed by the spirit of those men that had been murdered by my husband's grandfather. And then their spirits, they started to talk, and they said that they wanted a wife. Each one of them wanted a wife, and those men, they refused when he offered them some cows, and they said that all these years we are the ones that were looking after all of your cows and all of your businesses, so we do not want your dirty money. All that you have to do is you have to give us our wives. So after my husband's aunties had passed away, these spirits, they rested for a little while, and the whole family thought that those avenging spirits, they would never return back. So by the time that me and my husband started dating, that was the same time that the avenging spirits kept on coming back to the family, demanding two wives again. And that was the reason as to why I got married. My husband chose me, even though I come from a very poor family and he came from a very wealthy family. So when I got married into this family, that was when I was told that this was the reason as to why they had allowed my husband to get married to me, even though I come from a very poor family. So after I had fallen pregnant, I was taken to a lot of traditional healers, and I was dedicating my daughter to the spirit of one of those men that was murdered by my husband's grandfather. And it was not only me. My husband, he had his younger brother. He got married also, and after he had gotten married, his wife as well, after she had given birth, then her daughter was also dedicated to the other spirit of that other man who was murdered by our husband's grandfather. So that was the translation of the message that she sent to me. So we spoke after she had given me the confession, and she then said, my brother, I had lied to you. My daughter is still alive. She can't get married, and she will never fall in love with anyone, because she already has her own husband. Yeah, strange things do happen in this world.